we're going to continue with my triangle. So a fire needs fuel, heat, and oxygen in order to burn. So it doesn't always, heat can come from a match or it can come from friction or whatever. But this triangle gives us fire. Now, there's 5 classes of fire: A, B, C, D, and K. Now we must pick the type of fire extinguisher for a fire that we have. So class A is wood and paper, B is flammable liquids, C is electrical equipment, D is combustible metals, and K is combustible cooking media. Now most offices have A fires, which have the green triangle, or so it can be a green triangle with a black A in it or a white A. And we can put out the fire with a dry chemical or water. So most fire extinguishers that are class A have a powder in them. And then B are, you'll see red, a red square. And that can include gasoline, diesel, propane, natural gas, other gases. We cannot put them out with water. We have to use a chemical or a foam. And what happens is, so if I've got gas, gasoline, and I've got a fire happening, the gasoline vapors are what's causing the flames. So if I put a foam on top, that will shut the fire off because oxygen cannot get to the fuel source. But water doesn't work because water just spreads the gasoline all over the place. See, water works and like paper because it soaks the paper, so the dryness is gone, and that puts out there, so there's no more fuel for the fire. But water doesn't put out a gasoline fire because the gasoline just spreads. The water just makes it spread. Now, so we have to use a chemical. Now, some people figured out that they could make a technology that sucks the oxygen out of the air, so it adds and it does that. It doesn't actually suck the oxygen out. It just makes us have less oxygen. So we pump in carbon dioxide or some other chemical, and that kind of the carbon dioxide is heavier than the oxygen or more dense. So it kind of so we end up with carbon dioxide everywhere, and the oxygen floats up away from the source of the fire, and that puts the fire out because there's no oxygen to burn. And then class C is electrical. Now remember, people think, well, electricity, but electricity doesn't burn. So it's the equipment that involves, it's electrical equipment that caught fire. So even though the equipment can be technically a class A or B source because it's electrical, now it's a class C. And a chemical agent that does not conduct electricity must be used to put out the fire, unless the equipment is not energized. If there's no power going to your equipment, then you can use a class A or B agent. Now, I'm going to tell you, most commercial fire extinguishers are rated as A, B, C, so they can do all three, which is really good because in an office environment, you don't have to think about what kind of fire you're going to have. Just put it out. And then D, our class D extinguishers are rare. They're only for combustible metals like magnesium or titanium, which can burn. You don't really have those in most environments. And we cannot put a metal fire out with water because the metal reacts with water and it creates an explosion. So, so class D extinguishers are quite rare. And then finally we've got K. So K is for putting out grease fires like in a kitchen. So a fire like oil and water don't mix. So we want to use a special chemical. So if we've got again like a gasoline, but now we've got oil or fat, so we've got a special chemical that puts out the fire. So we can summarize here. We've got different agents for putting out fires. So we've got water, foam, carbon dioxide, a a dry chemical. So we've got regular dry chemical, which is sodium bicarbonate, and we've got a purple dry chemical, which is potassium bicarbonate, and then we've got a multi-purpose chemical, which is ammonium phosphate. So, so the dry chemical just smothers the flames. So it covers the fuel source and the fire, so the fire cannot reach, or so oxygen cannot reach the fire, and that just puts the fire out. Now, most of your extinguishers use ammonium phosphate because it's class A, B, and C, whereas purple and regular dry chemical are only good for A and, or actually they're only good for B and C. Same with carbon dioxide. It's only good for B and C. It does not put out, none of these put out a standard fire, which is your most common fire. They only put out a gasoline fire and a electrical fire. And then we've got foam. So foam cools the fire down and it creates a layer between the fire and the oxygen. So it's good for class A and B fires, but it doesn't do class C. And we've got water, which only puts out class A fires. It does not, it'll make a class B and class C fire worse because it conducts electricity. So it's actually not safe for class C. So you're always better off with the ABC fire extinguisher. And the other option, of course, is for class D as a dry powder, and then for class K, we use a wet chemical, which is a liquid that smothers the flame, and it's like potassium acetate. Now, when you get a fire extinguisher, it will be labeled by its size, and the larger it is, obviously, the more effective it is. So read the label, then you'll know. Now, if you see a small fire, you might be able to put it out, and that depends on how big it is, how good you are at using a fire extinguisher, how much training you have, if you even have the right extinguisher for your fire, and how far an extinguisher is if you have to run to get it, and how does the fire spread. Always, always call the fire department. That's the first thing you do. You see a fire, call 911, or if you've got a partner, one of you calls 911 and one of you gets the fire extinguisher. And that way, if you don't put out the fire department's already on their way, so they have the resources and the skills to put the fire out if you can't. And that can save like precious minutes where you're struggling to put out the fire, but it gets worse, and then your building burns down because then you call the fire department and now it's too late. So always call the fire department. Now we're gonna tell you the pass. Now if you see a fire, stop, call 911, evacuate the building, and find the right fire extinguisher. Now, if you don't have the right fire extinguisher, then don't use it because you'll just make the fire worse or more dangerous. Now, you aim at the base of the fire and you spray short bursts and sweep back and forth. If you run out of fire, if your fire extinguisher is empty, then you have to leave and close all the doors and windows. That will slow down the fire, and then leave the lights on, and that will help the firefighters. Now, if you do manage to put out the fire and you didn't call a fire department, you want to keep a fire watch because a fire might look like you put it out, but it might still be like it might still be uh, smoldering, and so that fire can restart without you knowing. So you want to watch the area for like an hour at least. So here's a pass method. It's pull the pin, aim the nozzle at the base of the fire, and then squeeze the handle, and then sweep from left to right, and then look at the fire and then do it again. Any questions? Please post a comment.